Madam President, I think it's important for us at this moment to reflect on a little Senate history. This goes back to the year 1991, 27 years ago. It was a chapter in the history of the Senate and the Senate Judiciary Committee, which many people who lived through it, either as observers or participants, will never forget. It refers to the hearings for the approval of the nomination of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. Let me read to you a summary of what occurred. After Anita Hill alleged that Judge Clarence Thomas had sexually harassed her, the full Senate on October 8, 1991, agreed by unanimous vote, unanimous consent, to delay a vote on Thomas's nomination to the Supreme Court until October 15th. Madam President, let me underline that. The full Senate agreed by unanimous consent to delay the vote after the allegations surfaced. 3 days later, beginning on October 11th, the Senate Judiciary Committee held public hearings over the course of 3 days, enabling Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill, and other witnesses to testify in an open setting. 2 days after the hearings ended on October 15th, the Senate then voted on Thomas's nomination. However, we've learned subsequently that this process was rushed to a point where information came out after the hearing that in fact several other women had made similar allegations. Having said that, according to press reports from 1991, Anita Hill faxed her 4-page statement making the allegations to the Judiciary Committee on September 23, 1991. Then Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Joe Biden, in turn, passed that information on to the White House and the FBI. On the same day that this letter was faxed to the Senate Judiciary Committee, on September the 23rd, 1991, White House counsel C. Boyden Gray ordered the FBI to investigate Anita Hill's allegations. The FBI spent 2 days investigating the allegations, including conducting interviews with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, and completed its report on September the 25th, 1991. I recount that history because it is remarkable in light of what we have witnessed with the allegations of Dr. Ford. First, that the Senate, by unanimous consent, Democrats and Republicans, once this allegation surfaced by Anita Hill, voted to delay the vote on Thomas's nomination. And secondly, that when the the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman, Joe Biden, turned over the allegation on the very day he received it to the White House counsel, C. Boyden Gray, ordered an investigation by the FBI. Apparently, at that moment in history, Democrats and Republicans in the United States Senate and on the Judiciary Committee and in the White House at least wanted to maintain an open mind as to whether there was truth to the allegations and ordered an investigation. Contrast that with what we are going through here. Contrast that with the fact that many, including the majority leader who just spoke, have already presumed that any allegations by Dr. Ford should not be taken seriously, and as he said over and over again, that Judge Kavanaugh deserves the benefit of the doubt in this circumstance or more. That's a departure from where we were 27 years ago, when a credible allegation appeared and both sides stepped back and said, investigate it. Call them both before the Judiciary Committee. Let's hear their testimony before we make a decision. In many cases, since Dr. Ford's allegations have come forward, Republicans have prejudged this and dismissed it as political. And let me say a word about my friend and the ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein. Senator Feinstein faced a choice which none of us would want to deal with, and I think she did it responsibly. She received, through a member of Congress, a letter making the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. But it was clear in that letter that the woman making the allegations did not want her identity disclosed. The woman claimed to have been victimized by Brett Kavanaugh, and she did not want her name made public. What was Senator Feinstein to do at that point? Ignore her request? Make it public to the embarrassment of her and her family? She didn't believe that Senator Feinstein did not believe that's what she should have done, and she didn't. She continued to work with Dr. Ford. She reached out to her personally. She discussed the matter with her attorney. And when I hear statements on the floor from the Senate Majority Leader that suggest that there was a leaking to the press, I don't know where he's pointing his finger, but he shouldn't point it at Senator Feinstein. She is an honorable person, and she is a person who is sensitive to the reality of a victim and the fact that some of them are afraid to step forward and tell their story publicly. I think that's what occurred here. And the time came when the story did leak to some credible, and maybe not credible, I don't know, I couldn't characterize them, but some publication known as Intercept, and it started to make the rounds. And at that point, things started changing. They changed for the committee. The Senate Judiciary Democrats met last week, talked it over, and said, we believe that we should refer what we have redacted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We did. And then that was sent to the White House. We did that unanimously. And then, of course, the decision made over the weekend by Dr. Ford that she was willing to go public. I don't think that was an easy decision for her. Clearly it wasn't, because for weeks she made it clear to Senator Feinstein and others that she didn't want her identity disclosed, and it's understandable. Look at the attacks she's faced already and what she's likely to face in the future. It is a reality of sexual harassment and sexual assault that victims are reluctant to speak for fear of what will happen to them and their family as a result of it. So now we have a situation where we do not have an investigation of Dr. Ford's allegations by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This morning, the Senate Judiciary Democrats are making a plea to the president as well as to the Republicans to initiate the very FBI investigation which is necessary, certainly of Brett Kavanaugh's comments as well as Ms. Ford's comments about this alleged episode. I think at a minimum that should be done. What has been said by the Majority Leader this morning, and I quote him, so little order, so little sensitivity. I think that Senator Feinstein from the start showed sensitivity to the reality of the victims of sexual assault. I applaud her for that. I think it was a humane approach, a sensible and a rational approach on her part to work with Dr. Ford to the point where she was willing to speak publicly about it. Sensitivity, you know, it goes in both directions, both to the Kavanaugh family as well as to the Ford family in this circumstance. And in terms of order, it is difficult to judge when a person is willing to make a decision. Obviously, after 6 weeks, Dr. Ford made the decision she would become public. That was not a timetable established by Senator Feinstein or anyone else. It was one that she had to come to grips with in her own mind, from her personal point of view and from her family point of view. It's ironic, Madam President, that just a few weeks ago we had a hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee on this issue. I hope my Republican colleagues will think about that hearing and some of the things that were said. I hope they will treat Dr. Ford's allegations with the seriousness and dignity that survivors of sexual assault deserve. Chairman Chuck Grassley, who's my friend, made a statement during that committee hearing on June 13th. It was a hearing about the sexual harassment perpetrated by a federal judge, Alex Kaczynski. Chuck Grassley was addressing victims who spoke out against Judge Kaczynski's harassment. And this is what he said, and I was sitting right next to him when he said it. Chuck Grassley said, "Speaking out against powerful judges in a system that doesn't always protect victims takes tremendous courage. But because of your bravery," referring to these witnesses, "we can hopefully begin to make real, significant changes to these power imbalances that allow harassment to thrive." Madam President, I think I have a dual responsibility serving on the Senate Judiciary Committee. A responsibility of fairness when it comes to the allegations made by Dr. Ford, and a responsibility when it comes to fairness when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh in this circumstance as well. And that means that I am not allowed, in my own mind, to prejudge this and to say automatically Dr. Ford's right or automatically Judge Kavanaugh is right. What I need, what the American people need, are the facts. We should hearken back to what occurred before with President Bush and C. Boyden Gray, his counsel, when they ordered an investigation by the FBI. That should occur now. If we are going to have a hearing on Monday, we should walk into that hearing after an investigation which at least involves Brett Kavanaugh being interviewed, and at least involves Dr. Ford being interviewed, and at least involves Mark Judge, the person who's been identified as an eyewitness to this occurrence, being interviewed as well. There could be other relevant witnesses. I'll leave it up to the FBI and their investigation to come to that conclusion. But let's get the facts before the American people. Let's understand the seriousness of this responsibility. A lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land. That's what's at stake here. And the credibility of an alleged sexual assault victim and others who are watching this carefully in light of their own life experiences. I hope we meet that responsibility, but we will never meet it if senators continue to come to the floor and prejudge the facts before any investigation, before any testimony by either of these individuals. If we are truly going to meet our responsibility to advise and consent under the Constitution, it is time for us to step back, put our Democratic and Republican clothes at the door, and stand together in judgment of an important issue that affects the future of this country and the future of the Supreme Court. Madam President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.